Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Capstone Project 1 Solutions lecture. In this lecture, we'll just begin coding out an example solution for the Capstone project. Let's hop to our editor and get started. Okay, so here I have the text editor open, as well as the example of what we eventually want the landing page to look like. Say welcome to the landing page, scroll down, when we hit sign me up, it takes us to a thank you page. So let's focus on that right now, and I'm going to need basically three files. One HTML file for this main page, one HTML file for the thank you page, and then a CSS file for the CSS of the project. Let's start out by creating the HTML for the main project page, this landing page. So I have a HTML file called project.html. It's actually currently linked here. So I'm going to refresh. It's cleared now, and we should have a blank slate to begin with. So let's refresh. We'll expand this just a little bit and decrease this browser so it matches up. And let's get started. So what we're going to do first is actually type in HTML and do the autocomplete there. And then let's give this something like project, or you can call it landing page. And then we also want to make sure that this is eventually linked to that project.css file, or whatever you happen to call the CSS file for this project. So there's our style sheet. And then what we want to do is have that heading 1 that says something like welcome to the landing page. And since we're a startup, we'll have heading 2. We'll say we're a startup that is cool, or it does something. Whatever you want to say is totally fine. And then we want some filler text, so we'll add in a paragraph there with lorem ipsum. We'll put in another paragraph, again with lorem ipsum. And then what we want to do is add in the form. So the form is also going to come here, and what we'll do is say h2, say something like sign up for our launch. Call the form tag, and right now we'll just give it no class. We'll call it the class email form in case we want to ever access it. But remember, we want to link to the thank you page and the action call upon hitting that submit. So I want to make sure that my action goes to thankyou.html, and then that means this method needs to be get. And I know we haven't discussed really post versus get yet. We will in a future lecture, but for right now, you should just know that from our previous discussions in the HTML forms lectures. Okay, so we had three inputs we wanted. We had the first name, the last name, and the email. So let's put these in. We want the input. This type is going to be just a text input. And we'll give the name of this to be first, so I can reference it later. We have another input that's also text. We'll give it the name last. We have another input, and that's going to be an email input. And we'll just give it the name email. And it would be also smart to pass in values right now, but we're really not doing anything since this is just a shell landing page. We're not actually accepting these values, so we won't put anything for input right now. What we do want to do is add in some labels. So we'll say this label is for first so that it matches the name. And then let's say first name for this label. The second input should also have a label. That's going to belong to last. And we'll call it last name. And then finally, we want a label here. And this is going to be the label for email. Remember, it's just matching the name here. And then we'll say email. So let's save this, refresh, and see what we have so far. It's looking pretty good. I'm zoomed in, so the font's a little weird. But we can see here that I have welcome to the landing page. We're a startup. That's cool. Let's change that. Save it and refresh. We're a startup that's cool. We have two paragraphs of lorem ipsum, sign up for launch, first name, last name, and email. Something that you may notice, however, is that the first name, last name, and email inputs are all on the same line. There's a couple ways we can take care of that. One way we showed earlier was to put in a blank paragraph in between these to try to get those line breaks. So if I click save here, I can see that inputting that fake paragraph or empty paragraph gets me what I was looking for. The other way to do this, which is a little better, is by using a break tag. And a break tag basically just says, hey, break to a new block. And that can be used with this command. You just put an open symbol, BR, and that's your break tag. And you can actually just type in BR and it will automatically fill that in for you. And then we can put in one more BR here. So we can save that, refresh, and we can see we have that line break. But then the issue with this break is that they are very close together. So what we end up having to do is add in a break to the labels as well. So we can add in those breaks. So it might have been a little easier just to do those 2 paragraph calls, but it looks a little more professional and nicer to use the actual breaks. Since the paragraphs aren't being used, you should probably use breaks even though there are more of them. It looks a little more professional and nicer because the actual use case of the break is being used here versus the paragraphs themselves. All right, so looks like everything's done for the HTML on the project page. Let's open up the thank you. Actually, we still need to do the submit button. So let's type that in real quick. We'll say input submit, and the value for this guy is going to be sign me up. And let's give it an ID so we can edit it later. Because remember, we're going to try to make these corners rounded on this. So we'll give it the ID sub. Refresh, and we see sign me up. Great. So let's continue. We're going to open up the thank you HTML. Here it is blank right now. Let's start by just typing in HTML, saving this. We want to make sure that we are linking to the eventual CSS file, which is going to be project.css, or whatever you happen to have called it. Save that. Then I'm going to add in heading 1, say something like thank you for signing up, and then we'll also add in a heading 2 that says something like we'll reach out to you soon, exclamation point. Okay, so far what we've done is we said we have our thank you HTML set up, our project HTML set up. So if those both saved, if I refresh this and add in some context to these guys, so at gmail.com and click sign me up, boom, now I get the thank you for signing up. Last thing I want to do is change the font right now. We're still on the default Times New Roman. Let me just make this a little nicer by choosing a Google font. So I will open up a new tab to fonts.google.com. Roboto is a really nice font that I like a lot, but let's choose something a little more fun. So Sanista, that looks pretty cool. So I'm going to add that. It says one family selected. I'm going to copy and paste this link, and I'm going to make sure that it's in both the thank you and project files. And then I'm going to copy and paste the thing I need to specify for CSS, which means I should open up my CSS file and then put in something like body, and then just copy and paste that font family. So let's save that, save this, save that, and refresh to make sure the font has changed. And there it is. Welcome to the landing page. Everything's looking good here. All right, so next thing we have to do is just edit the CSS to match what we had earlier. We're going to continue editing the CSS in the very next lecture, so you can take some time just to go over everything we did in the HTML. I know we went through it a little bit quickly in this lecture, so feel free to take your time with the actual HTML notes that are available to you under the Capstone Project 1 folder, or just watch this lecture at a slower pace or at a faster pace if I'm still too slow for you. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture where we'll finish off this project by editing the rest of the CSS file.